This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSPORT Fan Network. TalkSPORT. Powered by fans.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Red Side of the Trent as we close in on the new season. The 25-26 campaign is just around the corner. I believe as we record this, we're now 8 days away from the actual Premier League starting. I think it's 10 days for Forest, with us starting on the Sunday afternoon against Brentford. I'm joined on this one by, I'm going to call him my co-host for this one, Christian Brown, pod regular. Christian, how are you, mate?
Oh, good, mate. Self?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thank you. And we're also joined by the founder of the Copper Club and South American expert, and also friend of the pod, Nathan Joyce. Nathan, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you both doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Just eager to kind of get all this nonsense off Twitter away now and get started with some actual football rather than off the field stuff. So with Nathan coming on the pod, we are going to concentrate on Forest's South American contingent, which has actually grown this season as it stands by one. So far one has left the building, but two have come in. But we'll start with the outgoings and someone who hasn't yet left, but has apparently been told he can leave, and that is second choice goalkeeper Carlos Miguel. I think he played against Newcastle last season, Luton and Exeter, 3 appearances. Obviously, the Exeter game was not best for him. Is it a surprise, Nathan, to see him been told he's kind of surplus to requirements, or do you think it's been coming?
It's definitely been coming, hasn't it? Has he been given a fair chance? It's hard to say. He's barely had an opportunity. I actually thought in that Newcastle game, I know there was a goal within the first 20 seconds, and I can't really remember. I think 50% of people were saying it was his fault. 50% were saying it was just terrible defending. But he actually redeemed himself in that game, and he was pretty solid in the penalty shootout as well. Showed a lot of passion. So clearly wanted to be here. But the fact that Matt Sells completely stepped up last season limited his opportunities more than probably anybody expected, even Forest. So it's not a surprise. I think it's a case of another South American player coming across with limited game time. Yes, he was a little bit older, but we spoke about his circumstances before as to why that was. But he was just given the number 1 shirt at Corinthians, and he was playing incredibly well. And so Forest took that opportunity to bring him in as a number 2. And like, it hasn't worked out, but he isn't the first South American player to come over across to Europe and it not work out. But he'll probably go back to Brazil. Not sure where it will be now. I think as we're recording this, John is not going to West Ham, and they've signed another goalkeeper as a backup. So they now have like 3 options. So I don't think he's going to go and be the 4th there. Like, he needs to go to a club where he will be a number 1 and grow from there. But he did show glimpses at Corinthians that there was a real goalkeeper in there. But it's a huge sort of step up to come in and play these fiddly games, like come into a new environment, sit on the bench continuously. And then as a goalkeeper, I mean, it's the worst position. And I hate talking about goalkeepers, because as soon as they make a mistake, you're judged as well to be like, hang on a minute, I thought he was great. But yeah, the Exeter game, I mean, I can't stick up for him there. It was appalling, but 3 appearances to be thrown into a team like that, which was growing in the league, demanding cup performances, obviously getting to the semi-finals of the League Cup, etc. When he did step in or call upon, there was expectations of him to deliver similar appearances to Sells, and that was just never going to happen. He doesn't have that experience behind him. So it looked like a good deal at the time. I'll stand by it, but yeah, it's one which just hasn't worked out, and that will be the case. Not every signing Forest will make from South America and beyond will work out. And it was a cheap deal in the first place. So it's not as if they've lost 10, 20, 30 million out of it.
I think probably when he came in as well, there was at the time, let's be honest, some uncertainty about Sells. He'd come in as a replacement for Turner and Blackademos and been a safe pair of hands at the back end of the season before last. So he probably came over thinking I could get this guy's number one shirt, and then we've ended up getting a Ballon d'Or nominee in the end, which is absolutely crazy. So I do think personally as well, like there'll probably be some mutual kind of conversation between him and Nuno where he's like, look, I want to play, and Nuno's probably going to be like, well, look, you're not going to play here because Matt Sells is number one and you're just not going to take his spot. So it's probably a case of shake hands and move on kind of thing. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. And there were some concerns highlighted before he came for like how tall he is. He wasn't very good at being able to catch the ball from crosses. In the Premier League, you need to be on it with your well, not only we'll get onto his distribution in a minute, but also just being confident inside the box, in and around the 18-yard box, his distribution as well. Everything needs to be completely on point already for a goalkeeper in the Premier League. You can't go into the Premier League and sort of work on these areas. You just don't get those opportunities because, as Matt Turner found out over and over again, you will get punished. So he was never going to get these opportunities unless it was in the cups. And yeah, it didn't quite work out for him. But I don't think that makes him necessarily a bad goalkeeper. Forest's expectations just went up and up and up as the season went on. So he can go back to Brazil or South America, and I'm sure he'll get an opportunity.
Yeah, I think the one at Exeter is what kind of did it, because that was bread and butter, unfortunately, for any keeper. I was stood a couple of yards behind that, and he literally didn't even have to jump to put that out of the sky. And it was a howler, unfortunately.
I think it's confidence, though, and like confidence is key in any position, but
Yeah.
especially for a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
And I know you're playing Exeter, so Forest fans listening to this will be like, well, every player should be a step above and dominate those kind of games. But to go into an environment like that when you've barely played more than 90, 180 minutes and your confidence is probably a little bit low anyway, it's probably not a day he enjoyed. So yeah, I mean, we can talk about that game all day, couldn't we? But it wasn't great. But he'll go back to Brazil, and I'm sure there's worse places to live.
How much do you reckon we'll sell him for, roughly? Do you reckon we'd recoup what we spent? Do you reckon we make a profit on him even? What sort of figures do you reckon Forest sort of move on for?
I can't actually remember what Forest paid for him.
It was like 3 million, 3.5 million. It wasn't a lot.
Okay.
But yeah.
You may make a couple on that. I probably expect him to go for around the €5 million mark. If he doesn't go back to Brazil, it's got a Turkish team written all over it, hasn't it, for that sort of fee? So you probably recoup the money plus a little bit extra, which will probably cover his wages over the last season. But I think that's probably about it.
That's fair enough. Unfortunately, one other person that left the club was much beloved Danilo, who has already wasted no time in settling into Botafogo's midfield with a glorious assist last night. If you haven't seen it, I would suggest that you do.
Yeah.
In fact, Nathan shared it. So
as well timed, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was beautiful past that. Yeah, it's a lovely little straight into the striker's path. How did you sort of feel about the whole Danilo thing? So it sort of seemed to me is that it was a lot of things could be true in the sense that it was a lot of money for the club to turn down, especially given this. It was I think 20 million. We obviously signed for 16. It was 2.5 years into his deal anyway. And obviously there were still maybe reservations over his injury, perhaps. I don't know. But would you like to have seen Forest maybe give him a bit more time to sort of settle in, or do you think it was sort of like maybe the best move for all parties?
It's a really difficult one to answer because I absolutely love Danilo. I love what he did in Brazil. I think how he took to Forest in that first season, I think his contributions were vital for keeping Forest in the league. And then look at the expectations on him at the start of last season before that horrific injury. Like everyone was so excited to see what he could do because in a similar way to Dominguez, he's moldable in terms of positions. And I don't know if that was his downfall in the end. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because he's not a 6, but he's not a permanent 8. But then at the same time, he's quite fluid. But Danilo has always been the sort of player who needs to have a run of games. Yes, you may have a poor game in that run of 4 or 5, but you need to almost get that out of your system to get the best out of him. He's very much a confidence player as well. So we saw all different sides of Danilo all the time, and people will argue it back and forth whether he should have gone or not. I mean, when Forest signed him for 16 million on a 5-6 year deal, like I thought they would at least get double that in a season or two time. So, and like Arsenal were sniffing round. I don't think they were the only club. I think if he hadn't got injured, he would be one of the key players within the squad this time round. So it's really unfortunate circumstances for a Forest point of view. But if I've got my Brazilian journalist hat on, I'm delighted to see him back in Brazil. I think a team like Botafogo is built for him at the moment. They've just sold their number 6. So he's just come in, slotted into a team who can sort of challenge for trophies this season. And there's no reason why he then can't go back to Europe in 18, 24 months and make that move back. He's still young enough. He probably still is eyeing up the Brazilian team, which some Forest fans will probably laugh at me for saying. But if he has an 18, 24 months in Brazil, as we expected him to grow without that injury, there's no reason why Carlo Ancelotti won't be looking at him in 2 or 3 years' time. So he's young enough to get over that injury. Hopefully being back in Brazil will sort of reborn him a little bit and get that confidence back. And look, we've already seen it already. He's barely been in Botafogo or playing for Botafogo for 2 or 3 weeks now. And last night he looked really settled in, and all the pictures after the match as well looked like he was one of the lads and he was enjoying his new environment. So I'm not sure how the move to Botafogo came about. We could talk about the Textor Marinakis links, and we'll probably be going into depth about that throughout the season and maybe even years to come. Who knows the truth, what's happening in there at the moment. But if we talk about his position and at the club, Botafogo is a great move for him. I'm just really sad that it didn't work out for him either at Forest or in the Premier League, but I'm sure he'll be back.
It's a strange one. I still think, on the whole, like it probably would be a successful signing for Forest. I think if you grade it to A to like F, for example, I'd probably put Danilo easy at the B mark, minimum, really. I mean, if you look at the contribution he gave to the club, like you said, first half season he came imperative to club survival. Even the second season, Nuno didn't win a game without him starting. You know, I think he started 7 games and Nuno won 7 games with him in charge. So it is a real shame because obviously he was that first choice midfield, first game of the season when it was Sangare and Danilo. And yeah, to lose both of the injuries so quickly was a bit abrupt, but especially Danilo's case, such a dramatic one too. But yeah, I mean, I really hope he does well out there and discovers his form. I think I saw even despite the injury, I saw Inter Milan were loosely linked with him while we were sending him over there. So there's certainly a pathway for him, I think.
My concern from, if I was looking at it from a Forest fan lens, was very much like a lot of fans were quick to be like, yes, let's pocket the money and we'll reinvest it. But time will tell in the market whether an adequate replacement actually comes in. It's all well and good saying, yes, £20 million is a good deal for Danilo in the circumstances. And I'm partial to agree with it to an extent, but it depends who comes in, whether even Sangare leaves, because I know there's been sort of whispers around that as well. So all of a sudden, you've gone from probably the most crowded area within that team and spoiled for choice to almost down to the bare bones, if there is that link with Sangare and what happens with Douglas Luiz, etc. But for me, it was bold to let Danilo go without potentially having somebody lined up. Whether they did and it hasn't gone through, I'm not 100% sure, but it was a bold play for Forest to do that so early in the market.
Just touching on Douglas Luiz, I know he's not plying his trade in South America, but he's obviously Brazilian. I mean, do you think that move would be a good one for Forest?
I don't know. I'm really sat on the fence with it. I think it's really easy to get carried away. I mean, what he has done and what he's achieved in the Premier League. If look, he can go and replicate that for Forest, what I'm about to say, I may make myself look incredibly stupid, but I'm questioning potentially why is it only Forest and Everton who are necessarily interested in him? Why hasn't it worked out for him at Juventus? I've read reports or seen stuff about his character as well. So, like, it's a lot of money, whether Forest stump it up at first or if it is the loan deal with the obligation to buy. It's for me, I probably would have rather held on to Danilo because I know what I'm going to get out of him, and you can't question his personality, for example. Where Douglas Luiz, I don't know. I just have a bit of a funny feeling. I might be completely wrong here, and obviously I'm not a professional scout or anything like that. But if it hasn't worked out with him at Juventus, they're keen to get rid. The only two teams linked are Forest and Everton. I feel like there would be stronger teams, and that's no offense to Forest or Everton, but I feel there'd be loads of teams, loads of competition if he was available, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams queuing around the block. But maybe there is that attitude problem, and I think that actually counts for a lot. Technically, the player is brilliant, right? We can't deny that. But for me, it's so much more. And look, the reason why Forest were so successful last season was because what they created off the pitch was replicated on it, and that's what money can't buy. So I'm skeptical. Like, I may be proven wrong, and if he comes back to the Premier League, whether it's Forest or Everton, and does well, I'll be the first to admit and hold my hands up. But it's a big fee. What links about 30, 35 million if it is the loan plus, if he signs in whatever capacity that is, whether Forest, Everton get Europe next season. It's not a small amount of cash. So Forest are now at that important stage where they're trying to develop, obviously want to stay in Europe again for next season. And that's when you're going to have to start spending money, as they've done already in this window. But you've got to get them right, these early ones, if you are to maintain and be a success. So I can see why Forest are going after him, but there's one or two reservations from me as to whether it will be that sort of Morgan Gibbs White or Elliot Anderson sort of level signing, which a few fans are getting excited about.
I think he went over there with his partner, didn't she? Sign for the women's team at the time. I believe they've split up now, so I'm kind of fingers crossed.
yeah.
He just wants a fresh start away from all that, and he can come back to
maybe.
But it is a lot of money, especially with Juve actively wanting the player to go as well. It's like that. When I saw they wanted 40 million euros, it was, and it was like, oh, Forest are thinking about paying now. I was like, oh, they want this guy gone. You know, you kind of got to meet. I know fans are like, oh, just pay it, and but you kind of got to meet in the middle. But we'll see what happens with that. It's
I'm not saying I agree, and I'm not saying I'm probably the worst person to come to for understanding PSR and all that. I try to just bury my head in the sand sometimes with it, but Forest seem to have got themselves and worked hard to get into a good position over the last 12, 18 months. And then all of a sudden, I'm not saying it's reckless spending, but you need to be really a 10 out of 10 confidence when it comes to spending anything 30, 40 million plus in this particular market. So that's where my reservations come for Forest fans.
Moving on to the new boys then. Two of them from, Botafogo. Who would have guessed that? I mean, we'll talk about Igor Jesus in a minute, but Jai Kuhn, I mean, it looked like he was going to sign, and then was it the PSG game where he had a really good game, and then there was like some rumblings that Real Madrid was interested, and it was like some agents kind of at play, it seemed, but in the end he came, and
I think that was paper talk. I don't think it was anything major. I think the deal
probably
was
to get a few more grand in his pay packet in the agent's pay packet, probably. But I went to the Fiorentina game the other night. It's the first time I've seen him live, and actually the first time I've probably watched him. He's very, very tall and very lean, I must say. Nuno was kind of playing him at right back, but he is a centre back into by trade. I mean, what you kind of expect from him this season? Where do you think he kind of fits in with Forest?
Yeah, I mean, I've not watched any of Forest pre-season's games, so I don't know what I've read. Obviously, Nuno's been trying to slot him at right back, which is
he's not a right back.
Yeah, he's definitely not, which is quite interesting as to why he's doing that. But for me, as soon as that link was made or when the signing was put in place, straight away he's gone in as Forest's number 3 centre back. I mean, what a pair to learn from in terms of Murillo and Milenkovic. I think, however the deal happened, I'm not here to speculate, but he's at Forest, and I think Forest have landed probably the next best Brazilian centre back after Murillo. And he's a very different style, but he's one who could progress at the same rate over the next 18, 24 months. There's just something really special about him. So confident on the ball, like good with both feet, excellent positioning. It could be describing Murillo. This could be the podcast we did a couple of years ago, right? It's all the same attributes. And to get a confident young centre-back with both feet, worth the weight in gold. I mean, I know it's cheesy to say, but it's completely true. And we got a taste, or Forest fans, sorry, got a taste of what he was like at the Club World Cup, and his performances were incredibly solid against teams like Atletico Madrid, PSG. So if there were any concerns that he couldn't step it up, like they were quashed straight away. So yeah, big fan of Jay. I think he's got a huge future ahead of him. For Forest to snap him up and maybe take advantage of whatever situation is happening between Botafogo, Lyon, etc. It was an incredibly intelligent move to swoop in, and I think we'll be having a similar conversation to what we did with Murillo in terms of how much is he going to be worth in the future, especially if he slots in at centre back. As and when that happens, I don't know if Nuno will ever switch to a 3 at the back and maybe feature all of them, or whether Jay will just have to take a bit of time. But I thought Murillo would need a bit of time, and he completely proved me wrong. As soon as he stepped in, that was his shirt and that was his position from day one. So if one of them gets injured, it's not panic stations for Forest anymore. I think Jay Cunha has an unbelievable future ahead of him. And yes, whether that was paper talk around Real Madrid, etc., it wouldn't surprise me if he continues at the rate expected. There's so much talk out of Brazil that he could be one of their starting centre backs in the next 2 or 3 years as well. So, like, huge talk. Brazilian fans getting very excited about him, and I think that says a lot. So he's also come from Santos Academy as well, and Santos's academy is unbelievable. So the plan was to get him into Europe through Lyon, but that hasn't materialized. He's at Forest, and there's another centre back to get really excited about, and it's not a position normally you would get excited about, but maybe Murillo's changed the game a little bit, and Jay is another one to definitely get excited about for sure.
No, I'm intrigued by him. I think even if Nuno goes to 3 at the back for whatever reason, it's sort of him sort of coming in, sort of get those minutes Morato was, or whatever else. It's generally exciting to sort of see what we sort of have at disposal. But obviously, along with Cunha was Sapinho, obviously Igor Jesus, who also had a very good Club World Cup. Someone you profiled in depth repeatedly before on Twitter, for example. You're obviously very confident that he can obviously be an asset. Obviously, his work rate, we've already seen that pre-season, really, even out of position, say in the wing or whatever else. He looks like he's a bit of a workhorse. Will put the yards in. Looks neat on the ball so far, which is quite nice. I think it was can't remember if it was a Fulham friendly or another one, but he was getting annoyed at a play not coming into him quicker, which is good to see him immediately sort of slot itself in. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because obviously Reece has obviously shared his view before. He's 24 years old. It's generally quite late for anyone to sort of come over from South America. Obviously, we found out of Ramon Sousa that, I mean, obviously, I still felt personally there was a player there in Sousa that deserved a bit more time, but alas. It's sort of an interesting one. I know his career started late. Obviously, he was in Qatar first, and then obviously went back to Brazil. But do you have any sort of reservations over Jesus' suitability to the Premier League or to Forest team, or are you very confident that this will be another success?
I'm not saying it's going to be I'm not as confident because I'm looking at Jay, who's a bit younger, and I'm categorizing him in a similar light to Murillo. So I love that the Club World Cup came about, and I love that Igor Jesus showed how good he was in that tournament, because as soon as the link happened, or as soon as the signing came about, I almost felt like I had to defend Igor Jesus rather than get excited about his profile, which was bizarre considering, yes, he stepped in for Brazil as the number 9, but it's a case of Forest fans or Premier League fans in general just going straight to the Wikipedia page going, well, he's only scored 5 goals. He's only got 2 or 3 assists. Well, we saw in the Club World Cup, well, he's actually scored a couple of goals, but he's much more than that. And maybe Forest fans have had a taste of that in pre-season as well, in terms of he's excellent for his link-up play. How he stepped into that Botafogo side, which went and won the league for the first time in 25 years, won the Libertadores for the first time, was because of his build-up play, how he could drop deep, how he can either hold it up with his chest or clever little roll-ons, back heels, stuff like that. It's all about how he gets the rest of the team to function. So when I first saw the links, or when I saw that they were genuine, from a Forest point of view, there's no reason why you shouldn't be getting excited, because how they set up last season with the wingers and looking to counter-attack, it's something that Chris Wood can't really do at times. Chris Wood is unbelievable in front of goal, but is he the best at dropping deep and holding the ball up and thinking about playing like the wings in or dropping it off to Gibbs White? Not all the time, where that's Iger Jesus' bread and butter. So, yes, he's not going to come in and get 10, 15, 20 goals, but does that make him a poor striker? No, it means that you're not playing to his strengths, which is all about the build-up. So, but he did score against PSG. He did score against Seattle, I think it wasn't Atletico. So he scored a couple of goals in that Club World Cup. And the timing of that tournament was perfect for any sort of Forest fan who was worried about how Iger Jesus would adapt to the Premier League. So, yes, his route has proven to be a bit different. But if we lead this conversation back to the beginning where we spoke about Carlos Miguel, and I know they're different positions, like Carlos Miguel came across with barely any appearances to his name and struggled. Iger Jesus has scored goals or performed to a high standard wherever he has been or whatever team he has slotted into. So the negative talk straight away was quite surprising, but I think that was because naively certain fans were going towards a Wikipedia page. But on the flip side, before I dress him up too much, Tim Vickery said that he was the modern day Didier Drogba. I saw that tweet going around and getting people very excited.
Yeah.
I love Tim Vickery. I think he's a great guy, but I don't know what he took that day. I think potentially he went a step too far and got rather excited because or maybe he hasn't seen Didier Drogba play in a while because let's be honest, he's a Premier League great. So just to sort of balance Forest fans' expectations, he's not quite Didier Drogba, but I think it's a very good signing. And I think the main question I put out to Forest fans who were coming to me for a discussion, shall we say, is the fact that, where was I going with that? Just lost my train of thought. Just not basic. Oh, in short, basically, look, let's just not judge him on the goals. We'll leave it at that. And I think he offers so much more. I lost my train of thought, so I can only apologise. But I spoke about Iger Jesus for the last 2 months now, but I think it's a really solid signing. Oh, yeah, I think I said that was it. I've remembered now. I think if you go back to his transfer fee and if you look across Europe, what other number 9 could you get for that fee where you'd be fairly confident that he could come in and deliver? And the fact that he's a bit of an unknown quantity stepping into the Premier League for his first season is probably an advantage to Forest as well because defenders won't know much about him. So for the fee, I think it's a really good acquisition. I think he's a solid forward. Just don't expect him to score 20 plus goals.
Interestingly, I mean, sorry, do you think, I mean, obviously, because I know he likes to drop deep, like you said. I know obviously Nuno's been experimenting loosely with Wood and Jesus up front. That's just in the last game with Gibbs White playing in midfield. Do you sort of see a world where he could maybe get into Gibbs White's way, obviously sort of occupying that sort of central spot behind the striker? Or do you think it's something that they can just work around because of their intelligence or whatever else?
Sure. I mean, look, Botafogo, when they won the 2 titles, played with a 4-5-1 formation, but pretty much had 4 attackers across the front line with Iger Jesus, which is why he didn't score many goals. And there was 5 of them interchanging all the time. And so Botafogo won those titles without anyone scoring more than 5 or 6 goals, really, because that's just how they worked in that system. And even over the last 6 to 12 months, Iger Jesus has been playing with at least 3 or 4 attackers within a Botafogo side. So I'm unsure. Like I said, I've not seen what Nuno's been doing with him, but I wouldn't be necessarily worried about that because Iger Jesus will know if he can just take one touch. He's football IQ and positioning. He's actually very strong. So I wouldn't say that would disrupt him. Playing him as a number 10 or dropping him a little bit deeper with Wood would be interesting. I haven't personally seen him in a forward 2 before, so I don't know how he would work there. But look, who am I to judge Nuno? If he wants to try something out, then let's see what happens.
He was trying that the other night, to be fair. Like Gibbs White was more in central midfield and Jesus was just off Wood. And like you said, Nathan, I thought his link-up play was really good. You can tell me I'm wrong here, but do you kind of see him in the same mold as like a Roberto Firmino type of player? That says to me what you're kind of describing.
Yeah, that's quite a nice comparison. I always hate that giving that question because you get held to it. It's like I've just done with
someone
Vickery,
through the
right?
middle who kind of brings others into play. He wasn't a prolific scorer, was he, at Liverpool? But he brought Salah and Mane into play. They scored the goals and he was a part of
definitely.
free,
Definitely.
wanted, which was brilliant for them under Klopp. So
No, I really like that comparison. Maybe should have saved that for an article or two myself. But
I'll send you an invoice.
you need that sometimes, though, don't you? Right? Because
Yeah.
certain times with Forest last season, the gap was quite big between. Look, Forest sat back so much and invited loads and loads of pressure, and that gap between Gibbs White or Dominguez and Wood was huge, right? So maybe Nuno's trying to find an addition there where we're playing to Iger Jesus' strengths, and he's the link-up play between the three or whoever it may be. So if Nuno can get him working that way, then look, Forest fans won't care about his goals, and it's all about what he contributes to the team, which is what he does anyway. So yeah, the next Firmino, there you go, Reece, you can have that, not me.
I'm thinking as well, like if we are, say 1-0 up away from home, he's someone you could probably bring on where if you've just got to clear it, he can hold it up. Tyro last season come on at times. He did try, bless him, but because he was like lacking in sharpness and fitness, he struggled at times. Whereas if obviously Jesus can just get it, hold it up, it just eases that pressure from the back at times. But I completely forgot about Ramon Sousa. God bless him. What did you make of that? I mean, Forest fans have probably said, look, we wanted to see some more of him. We didn't really see that apart from the Cups where he looked decent. He played really well at Everton away on his only Premier League start. But when it got to nitty gritty towards the end, it was very clear Nuno just didn't really trust him at all.
Yeah. I think Jota and Sousa were brought in with the expectations that Forest were probably going to go to around 14th, 10th and take a baby step up the table, not as drastic as going for Champions League. So those signings were made potentially on a budget, which would help with the squad. But yeah, as you said, Nuno didn't trust them. But look, with Ramon Sousa, a very technical player, very good in the final third, a confidence player, but not a good player at potentially tracking back, defending. He's never really played in teams where he's had to do that. So to adapt his game for the Premier League, maybe that's what limited him. But it would have been nice to see a bit more of him, but we barely saw anything from him. So whether you turn around and say that's the player or whether it wasn't a complete success, I don't know. I think it's harsh, but look, Palmeiras probably the biggest team or second biggest team in Brazil over the last 2 or 3 years have signed him for a chunky fee, and he's been thrown in straight away when there's loads of options there. I think that goes to show that there's still potential for him, and he's come from Argentina as well, where the Argentinian league is far below the Brazilian league. So maybe he looked unbelievable there, and then all of a sudden that jump to a team challenger for the Champions League was a bit too much in the end. And that's all it is. You don't need to debate it or read into it any further. He was a player bought for a mid-table Premier League team trying to take a chance. Forest exceeded expectations, which meant he was just bypassed.
I think with them type of players, look, they don't work. Not every signing works, but as long as you can kind of get your money back, no hard feelings, shake hands.
Yeah.
He is only a year older than Danilo. Do you expect to see him back in Europe at any point, or do you think his career lies in South America?
Yeah, he'll be staying in South America. I think there's a big gulf in players between Danilo and Sousa. And if he can go and play for Palmeiras and still rock up for Paraguay, if and when they make the next World Cup, then there's no reason for him to take the opportunity again. So, yeah, I think he will stay there now.
Yeah. Touching on the next player then, and someone who's definitely going to be staying in Europe, we've already spoke about him, and that's the guy with the shirt behind, Murillo. Like you said, I mean, Steve Cooper, I've heard this from Harry Toffler and I think other players. I think Steve Cook on our pod, I think Steve Cooper just had to chuck him in because he was basically that good in training. First season, he ends up winning player of the season. Last season, again, he was probably a little, I guess, harshly treated because fans expected that standard from him. Whereas, he wasn't spoken about as a player of the season contender really, but he was still brilliant last season, especially with that kind of mixture with Milenkovic as well, they just feel like Noel and Liam Gallagher wanted together. They just bounced off one another, and they're like different attributes just work so well. He obviously then got into the Brazil team. Was it Donival Jr., former Brazil manager, wasn't it? He got thrown in at the deep end at Argentina away. which was a disaster for not just him, but for Brazil as a whole. Was it 4-0 they got beat that night?
A 4-1. They did
4-1,
manage
so
to score.
they
Yeah.
managed to get a consolation. He's also signed a new long-term contract at Forest. And I mean, this is my opinion that Forest probably going to sell one big player every summer, really. So next summer, I expect it to be probably Gibbs White, and then the summer after, maybe Murillo. I mean, just plan out his future, Matt. What do you kind of expect from him, really?
I was surprised that Forest even signed him in the first place. I thought his ceiling was higher. So again, that's no offense to Forest. I just thought like a top European team would come in and swoop in and sign him and then show what he's doing at a higher level. But what he's been doing at the City grounds, I mean, I know this is a podcast, but what more do you say about Murillo? He's just been unbelievable. I'm going to disagree with you. I think if Forest don't have a good season, I think if Forest potentially say they fall to the Conference League for next season, I'm not making any accusations about what's happening this time around. I don't care. I'm bored of it now. But if for next season they fall out of Europa League or Conference League, or if it's a bit of a disaster and a drop off, and I'm not saying it will do, but you've seen it before with other teams trying to balance too many competitions, or if Forest peaked a little bit too early. I mean, Murillo is going to be looking at, I think if he wants to have that Brazil career, because that one game has sort of killed him amongst the fan base out there, I think he needs to go to a top team. And I think he'll be more, even with that long-term contract, I think, say, a top team comes in, for argument's sake, Real Madrid come in and offer 50 million plus a few add-ons, and Murillo wants to go, Forest aren't going to say no to that. So I think it does depend on what Forest do next season. If Forest obviously go and smash the league and get Champions League, it will stay. He will stay. But I just don't see that happening. So it could be Gibbs White next season, but I just can't believe Murillo's still here. I mean, maybe because of that unbelievable season last year and signing the contract, it all surprised me because I just expected somebody to come in with a chunky offer and Murillo wants to go. So it's a testament to his character, really, if we want to speak about that in terms of Forest gave me that opportunity. He obviously loves the club. He loves Nuno. He loves, obviously, what's going on in the dressing room. But as teams sometimes be picked apart, or when these drastic changes happen and maybe Forest lose that in the dressing room a little bit and maybe drop off in the league, he's going to have his agent in his ear. He's going to be thinking about all these top teams who will want him and his Brazilian career long term. So, look, the fact that Forest are being able to enjoy a third season of Murillo is a huge success in itself, especially in this day and age with the way transfers move so quickly. But look, Forest fans, enjoy him again. He's going to be probably up there again with for play of the season. He's just, and as you said there, I'll just say that the fact that Forest's weakness and maybe Murillo's weakness was defending set pieces, corners, but Forest identified a huge unit in Milenkovic, and then that raised Murillo's game and made him look stronger because he could focus on his best attributes as well. I just really want to see him score an unbelievable goal for Forest because he's threatened time and time again. That'll be a wonderful way for him to sign off as and when, or just want to see it in general, right? Because he's threatened it and sort of reinventing the wheel of what the modern game is. So as long as he continues to do that, I mean, we won't just be Forest fans watching him, will it?
I think the one at Villa would have been kind of so sentimental with Martinez, obviously Argentine keeper in goal as well. I think he would have smelt it if it hit the top corner. But I think Forest's valuation might put some clubs off at the minute, possibly. I'm just thinking, is it Zabrani who plays for Bournemouth? He's going to PSG today, 65 million. I can imagine Forest would want not a lot more, but more than that, probably towards the 80 million mark, which is crazy, really. But such is the transfer market. Do you think he makes the Brazil squad? If I was to put you on the spot.
I don't know at the moment. We've got Carlo Ancelotti, which has come in. So it's gonna be really interesting to see what he does long term. But like that game, he was awful, which is a sentence you don't really say often, is it? But completely thrown in the deep end at El Monumental that evening, in a really poor Brazilian team, but getting in front of the likes of Gabriel, Marquinhos, like established pros. Yes, Murillo is quote unquote perhaps world class, but Marquinhos has been doing it for years. Gabriel slotted next to him, and they have formed a good relationship. And look, as we've just said about Milenkovic and Murillo, once you have a formed relationship, it's hard to break that at times. So could easily go in as a squad player, but they have the likes of Lucas Beraldo as well. So there's a growing list of young centre backs. Murillo should be on it. It's just a shame because if he didn't have played that game, my answer would be completely different, and so would Brazilian fans' opinions of him. But they can be brutal at times.
What about Igor Jesus? Sorry, I didn't mention him. Do you think he makes it?
It's really interesting because Brazil just don't have a number 9 at the moment. Everywhere else, like on paper anyway, they have been a disaster. But on paper, they have everyone they probably need. Minus fullbacks are a bit short there, but they don't have a number 9. You can say João Pedro or Cunha could come in. They've been playing Vinicius Junior there, but he is a chalk and cheese with how he's with Real Madrid and Brazil. So potentially, but there's been more talk about Cal Jorge, who plays for Cruzeiro, who's scored like 13 goals already this season, and there was Yuri Alberto, who won the Golden Boot in Brazil last season with 16. So I think they want to see him maybe over Igor Jesus, but as you just said about Firmino, it's a different option to have. So it wouldn't surprise me, but I think he'd very much go in as a squad player.
That's an interesting one. It's quite fascinating to think that we could be sort of half filling the Brazil national team at the World Cup.
Yeah.
But, obviously, from one South American giant to another in Argentina, and Nicolas Dominguez obviously very cruelly was denied his international recall after getting injured in that ill-fated Chelsea game. How have you sort of found his development over the last season? I know you've been a very staunch defender of Dominguez online, especially in relation to selection, which we won't go into any further. But I mean, for me, he's probably the most underrated player I think I've ever seen at Forest. Whether that is because of sentimentality towards other players, I don't know. But how do you sort of see it going for Dominguez this season, and where do you sort of see his international chances lying in the future?
I think with Dominguez, obviously because he's out now, and we're not 100% sure when he's going to be back on the pitch. If Forest don't find a replacement for Danilo, if they start the season slowing in around that position, I think it will be a real eye-opener for Forest fans or Premier League fans who don't maybe know too much about him or maybe on the fence. Actually, how much Forest need him. I think technically he's very classy. I think that's the word I want to use for Dominguez. So good even if you just watch him in games when he picks the ball up in defensive positions, he's so comfortable with just one touch to turn it with either his left or his right foot and to open up options for him where certain players in the team don't have that. And I just feel like Dominguez is a little bit unfortunate because he's been put in all sorts of random positions, especially over the last season, but he's been happy to play in them, and he's just such a workhorse. He's almost like that. He's technically better, but he's a bit like a Dirk Kuyt in terms of like, well, you can run, so you can play there. And Dominguez is happy to fill that void. But I think as a number 6, I don't know what more you would possibly want from a player like that. I just think his IQ is so high as well. You could turn around and say, oh, you want more goals from him. But I mean, it's not his job. His job is almost the assist before the assist. It's his job just to move the ball forward and work to win the ball back, which he's very good at. So I think he's very close to that World Cup squad. Obviously, he was called up, but obviously got injured. And if we look at Argentina's midfield, it's absolutely ridiculous. But if you look at the bench, there are 2 or 3 options there who you would probably say Dominguez is better at. And that's why he deserved to get that call up. So hopefully that injury, he comes back and it's not a Danilo situation. He continues improving on the pitch. And then we'll see him in the US with Argentina. Whether he'll play or not is a different question. But he should be within that squad. And again, for Forest to have a player who's on the cusp of the Argentinian squad and on the cusp of being a reserve player for that incredible midfield, which is Kevin McAllister, Thiago Almada, etc., etc. Like, he's very undervalued by a lot of the fan base, and personally, he's one of my favourite players in the Premier League. But that's just because I love a number 6 anyway. So he's not quite on the level for me like an Andre at Wolves. I think Andre at Wolves is unbelievable, but it's that sort of just high intelligence in that position, which a lot of football fans miss because they're looking at the assist or the stats in the final third. But the way in which Dominguez operates all around the park is just, yeah. I mean, I'm sure you both will hopefully agree after my huge sort of rant there, but I think he's a
Oh no,
wonderful player.
he's so good.
I
He's
love
just
Dominguez.
like he's just. I've said this before. I think he doesn't get the recognition he gets. I think he's almost too clean in that he's just very. He just nips in, gets the ball out, and you don't really, because he isn't thundering through someone or because he isn't doing anything. You know, he's not late in a challenge, not booting someone into the sky. We sort of assume he's not doing anything, but the reality is actually he's very effective at what he does. He gets the ball very quickly. He doesn't mess about with it. Very simple. Normally 1-2 touches max, lays it off to someone else, off he goes. And he's just such an underrated player. I mean, we spoke about IQ earlier, obviously Jesus, whatever else. Dominguez is way up there for me in terms of players I've seen for us. Way up there in terms of the way he reads the game, sees the game, just criminally slept on. But yeah, I mean, obviously we have to hope his injuries are too serious. I know we've seen him with the team and stuff, and we sort of like doing gym work and whatever else. But yeah, it looked pretty
pitch side the other night.
Yeah, whether he actually plays, you know, I mean, they sort of said I think the opening game might be a bit too close, but it wasn't as bad as first feared. So never know. Maybe I'll
imagine trying to ease Dominguez back in though, because he will run his socks off. Right? Imagine saying to Dominguez to be like, "Look, you know those first couple of games, just take it a little bit easier." He hasn't got that switch in his mind, but I think that's an amazing attribute to have, and he's always on his knees, whether it's 70th, 80th, 90th minute. But it's a credit to him. I think he'll run and run and run, but as soon as he gets on the ball, there's that switch where that classic part of his game comes in, which is why Forest fans love him so much, and I do as well, for sure.
I think what I really like about Dominguez is what I saw last season was the fact that at the start of the season he was probably 5th choice centre mid, really, and
it's wild to think.
Yeah, and that because towards the end of the window there was you get the Turkish links, don't you? Galatasaray, your Fenerbahce's. And my little story on Dominguez, I might have told you this, Christian, but I was in Eva's grill after we lost 1-0 at home to Fulham, and this Bentley Continental comes up outside, and there's some kids, and look out the window, and it's Nico Dominguez, and he looked absolutely gutted because he'd not played any part at all. And then there was a kind of rumour that I've been speak to Nuno about his playing time. He obviously got in the team, I think maybe Palace at home. And then I remember him being really good at Leicester away. And then he kind of never looked back then. And, I know he wasn't ideal when he was on the right. But like you said, Nathan, he's willing to play anywhere he's asked to play. And even where there was that little Instagram post, wasn't there, between him and Sousa about being on the bench. You've got a player with all the mercenaries Forest have had who are just happy to pick up a wage. And he could easily do that because he'll be on good money at Forest. He wants to play, and I love Dominguez. It was such a shame that he got that injury because, he must be doing something right if Argentina are calling up. That's the proof's in the pudding there, isn't it?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. Definitely agree.
Right, well, just moving on to us last of the South American contingent, and that is someone who I'd say started the season pretty well. He was nicknamed the Doorman, and he was coming on and seeing games out, but as the season probably progressed, there's a couple of errors. Fulham away, Villa away, I think was the one where he was fiddling with his sock and Morgan Rogers got in behind him. And then he's kind of gone a little bit downhill. I thought he was really shaky the other night in the game against Fiorentina. I mean, I know it's only pre-season, but that's Morato. What do you kind of expect to see him this season, especially with Jai Kuna coming in as well? He's probably gone from that 3rd choice centre-back now to maybe being 4th, or maybe someone Forest might look at even moving on. What do you think?
The fact when you first started that sentence was we're moving on to the last South American, and I couldn't think who it was. Maybe that's where my mind is.
I guess people kind of think because he's come from Benfica, he's Portuguese, but he is Brazilian. I'm not going to ask you if he gets in the World Cup squad for this one.
You can if you want. You'll get a short answer.
I think it'll be a no.
It's an interesting one. I think because there's always a mistake in him, it almost feels like Forest Twitter have got the pitchforks every time he's on the pitch. I don't think he's a bad player, but I think because he is challenging with the likes of Milenkovic, Murillo, and now you've got Jer Cunha come across, like I think he does automatically fall down the pecking order. So whether Forest look to potentially get somebody else in, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't see him being at Forest long term. But it depends if anybody wants to come in and sign him in the first place. He screams like a loan somewhere, doesn't he? But I don't see him playing unless there's a huge injury to Forest's backline over the next season. So I think he's an okay player. I think he has good moments, but for every 2 or 3 good moments, it just seems to be a little bit like Montiel in terms of he can play well in a game, but every time he makes a mistake, it's incredibly costly. So I'm not sure if that's a run of bad luck or whether that's just happened. Well, you can only have bad luck so many times because it's happened a fair few times now, but it's similar vibes to Montiel, isn't it? So yeah, he's okay, but I think the fact now Forest have got in another really top third class centre back in terms of Jer Cunha, you don't have to worry too much because he probably will have his minutes limited if Forest don't move to a 3 at the back, because then obviously then he's the only replacement. Well, Willy Bolly as well, but is he going to get game time or is he just there for in the background? I'm not 100% sure. It seems like that at the moment. So yeah, it feels like we're wrapping the podcast up on a bit of a downer, doesn't it, talking about this? But I think he's okay but costly, which is not what you want at this level.
I guess it might fall into what you said earlier, Nathan. The Jota Silva kind of Sousa category is that he was brought for like a backup for a team that was probably going to finish 12th, 14th around that area, and he's come in. And I mean, I think the only game, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, but the only game he played in a 2 was Everton away again, and he was really good that game with Milenkovic. And then it's just like Nuno seems to, when he does play in a 3, when he started, he plays him on that right side where he just doesn't look comfortable. And the 2 games I mentioned, Fulham away, Villa away, he was exposed on that right side, especially the Villa one, because he had Dominguez next to him as well, who's a centre midfielder at right wing back. So I just thought that was a bit of a tactical strange one from Nuno. Just like kind of stick Milenkovic over there because he's more of a solid centre back. But do you want to finish it? Can you think of anything to finish it on a positive note?
With Morata, I think it was a case of, I can't remember when he signed. I think he came quite late in the window.
I think he was last day, I believe.
And there was links with him before. Not sure if it was previous window or at the beginning of the window. So look, I think it was a case of maybe Forest had him lower down the list, trying to bring in other targets. I don't know. There's the Brazilian centre back who was at Roma who ended up going to Saudi, of course. I think that was a target over his head. So I think Forest just worked their way through the list and then got to Morata, and that was it. But yeah, as you said, like he has had some steady games, but the mistakes sometimes seem a bit catastrophic, which is never ideal at this level.
Anything else to add, Christian?
No, nothing from me. Unless you want to talk about like Brandon Aguilera. So it's not really South America, is it? It's Costa Rica. But no, that's everything from me. No, but many things coming on, Nathan. Always very able to get your insight on South Americans. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to plug anything, Nathan, before you go?
Yeah, why not? So if people want to hear more about what's going on in Brazil, South America as a whole, we do the Copper Club podcast. We do at least 2 a month. Myself and Jessica Frota. She is well worth listening to. If you don't like the sound of my voice, she's an expert at Brazilian football. And we're in the middle at the moment of launching a new website. So people may have noticed that I've been doing longer posts across Twitter, and I'm sick of doing it as well. So hopefully we've got a brand new website coming in the next month, potentially, where we will host all different types of articles, player profiles, and plug our podcast on there as well. So yeah, look, if you like South American football, and hopefully you have, if you've listened to 53 minutes of this podcast, you can get even more on my podcast.
Lovely. All right. Well, thank you once again, mate, for coming on. We really appreciate it. All right.
Always pleasure.
Yeah.